The Prine's backyard in Ardsley Park was strung with warm yellow bulbs through the old live oak, and the grill glowed a low red. The night smelled of charred meat and jasmine. 10 years since David, my old captain, Colette's husband, my best friend Sadie's father. My pickup had died half a mile out. Sadie was making up the guest bed. I stood by the grill with a glass of water when Colette turned from the last candle, saw me watching, and walked over. I froze. She leaned close and whispered one sentence that stopped my heart cold and turned my whole face warm. What she whispered, close enough that I felt her breath, was this. "Would you like to go out with me?" That was all. So plain I thought I'd misheard. I hadn't. I stood there beside the grill for 2 seconds with my mouth half open. She stepped back half a step, still watching me. I nodded. Just nodded. She nodded back and turned to check the biscuit tray like nothing had happened at all. Nobody in the yard saw. I stayed there another 10 minutes, and the water in my hand went warm. My name is Damon Crestwood. I am 38, lieutenant with Engine Company 9 here in Savannah, 13 years in the coat. I live alone in a small one-story in Baldwin Park, wooden porch, magnolia by the walk. I've been alone in that house 4 years, since my ex-wife Sable Kilpatrick left for Atlanta with a corporate attorney. She used to say I was obsessed with a dead man. She was half right. The other half she never asked about. The Prines have been the ground under my feet for 10 years. David trained me the day I walked into the bay at 25. On the 30th of March, 10 years ago, the Kirkwell building went up on Broughton. I got pinned under a fallen ceiling joist on the top floor, radio dead, the crew already outside. David turned back into the building alone. He got the joist off me and dragged me to the stairs. The ceiling came down behind him. He didn't make it out. A week after the funeral, I walked up the red brick path to the Prine house for the first time. Colette was 38 then, steady-eyed while my hands wouldn't stop shaking. She put David's captain's helmet in my hands and said he'd made her promise a month before that I'd be the one to keep it. Sadie was 16. Reggie was 18. They said I was family now, and I was not to disappear. So I didn't. Every 30th of March for 10 years I've come to that table for Colette's lemon butter striped base, David's recipe. We just sat in the same room. Sadie is 26 now, a paramedic, following her father's line. Closest friend I have in this world. She's called me Big Brother since she was 18. Reggie is 28, a firefighter with me on Engine 9. 11 years ago, in the bay, David slipped a small brass compass into my hand and told me the fire finds you, but the direction is yours, and to keep it in my pocket. I've kept it in the chest pocket of my turnouts every shift for 11 years. Sable made me stop bringing it into the house for the last 4 years of our marriage. I hid it in my locker. I know now, telling this from the far side of it, that Colette had one just like it. David gave her hers the day they were married, 22 years ago. She kept it in a wooden box in her bedroom. She never told me. She was waiting for me to say I had mine. I was waiting for her. We both waited. 10 years. She told me later that the Christmas 3 years back was when it turned for her. She was setting the table, I was outside stacking firewood with Reggie. Through the kitchen window she saw, for the first time, not the rookie her husband had saved but a man. She scolded herself and put the thought away. It did not go. Around the same Christmas she handed me a mug of cider and her fingers touched mine and neither of us pulled back. Sadie walked past. We didn't see each other. Not yet. This past year she wrote me 14 letters and never mailed a single one. I used to keep a journal, 6 years of it, that Sable took the night I moved out. I thought I'd lost it in the move. I stopped writing. Tonight was the 10th anniversary. Sadie asked if I was coming and I said yes. I drove my Ford pickup from the station, and it coughed on Bull Street and quit half a mile from the house. I walked. I was 20 minutes late. And now I stood by the grill with her question ringing warm inside my ear. If I'd known she would finally ask the question she'd been carrying for 10 years, I might have fixed the truck sooner. Or later. I don't know. All I know is I nodded, and she nodded back. I couldn't sleep in the guest room. At 2 in the morning I came down the stairs in my socks, and she was already in the front room, in David's old reading chair, a heavy cardigan wrapped around her, one lamp on. She had a book in her lap she wasn't reading. I sat in the chair across from her. She said, quiet, that I did not have to say yes just because she'd asked me on the anniversary night. I told her I had nodded already, but I needed to know what it was going to mean before I said the word out loud. She said she needed to know too. But there was one thing she was sure of. 10 years was enough. We sat there 30 minutes. Nobody touched anybody. Nobody kissed anybody. We just sat. She got up first and told me to sleep, and that the coffee would be on by 7. I did not sleep. I left before dawn, 5:30, and walked 3 kilometers to the tow yard on Louisville Road. I didn't say goodbye to Sadie. I didn't say goodbye to Reggie. I couldn't have explained where I was going. 11 days passed. Then she texted. She asked if I would meet her at Foxy Loxy at 9 on Saturday morning. I typed one word back. Sure. Neither of us added anything else. She was already there when I walked in, at the corner table by the window, her hands folded on the wood. Her wedding ring was still on her finger. I asked her, careful, if she was hesitating because of the ring. She looked at me a long moment and told me she was hesitating because of 10 years. Not the ring. The ring was a memory, not a leash. She would take it off when she chose to, not when anybody nudged her. I nodded and told her I had something I'd been carrying for 11 years and I didn't know when I'd set it down either. She looked at me longer, and she did not ask what it was. I know now she already knew. She just didn't say. We walked in Forsyth Park 2 weekends later. The fountain was throwing spray. Spanish moss dragged low off the oaks. Somewhere a kid was screaming with joy about a soccer ball. It was the first time I ever asked her about David the way a man asks a woman, not the way a rookie asks his captain's widow. I asked her if she had ever been angry with him for turning back into the Kirkwell for me instead of walking out with the crew. She was quiet a long time. She said yes. For 3 years, yes. And then she understood that if he had not turned back, he wouldn't have been the man she married. She had been angry at the thing she loved most about him, and she'd had to choose between letting the anger go or letting the love go. She let the anger go. I couldn't say anything for a minute. Then she asked me, gentle, if I was angry with him for going back. I told her no. I was angry with myself for surviving. She put her hand over mine on the bench and left it there, and after a minute we walked on and neither of us spoke for a long block. 3 weeks after that, I brought her to my house in Baldwin Park for the first time. Small place. Kept clean. She walked slowly through the front room and stopped in front of the crew photo on the far wall, the one where David is standing dead center in the front row and I am in the back, a rookie who didn't know where to put his hands. She stood there a long while. I stayed behind her. I couldn't think of what to say. Finally she said, quiet, that he had stood so straight in that picture. And that I was standing straight now, the same way. I told her I had learned it from him. She turned around, and it was the first time I ever saw her cry, not grief exactly, just 2 tears, and she thanked me for having lived. I took her hand. I did not kiss her. I just held on. Sadie found out the Saturday before that. I found out later. She had come by Foxy Loxy on impulse and seen us at the corner table, our heads bent together, laughing at something. She stood in the doorway 3 minutes and turned around and went home. That night she knocked on her mother's bedroom door and asked, half crying, if it was me. Colette said yes. Sadie asked if her mother was upset with her. Colette asked her the same back. Sadie said she wasn't angry, she was surprised. She said her mother had been sitting in her father's chair for 10 years, and if it was going to be anyone, she was glad it was me. But she told her mother to be careful, because I still carried her father's shadow. Colette told her she knew, and that they would carry it together. The next morning Sadie found me at the station. She stood outside the bay while I was hosing down the rig. She just said, "Big brother." I told her I knew she knew. She told me if this was love, she would stand with us. If it was gratitude wearing a mask, she would never forgive me. I told her I was already choosing. She nodded once and went back to her rig. Reggie was harder. He was David's only son, and I had been the older brother in that house since he was 18. When he sat me down at the station 3 weeks later, he was pale, and he said, "My mother," and asked if I was really seeing his mother now. We sat in the office 3 hours. I told him about that Christmas, the touch of hands, the thought I'd put away that would not go away. He listened all the way through. Then he asked me if I still had his father's compass. I told him yes. He looked at the floor and told me his father had given me that compass because his father had loved me, and I was not to hand it back to him. When I was ready, I was to give it to his mother. I didn't answer him. He got up, gripped my shoulder once, and left. Colette and I saw each other once a week for the next 3 weeks. Coffee. A walk. One dinner at my place where she came late and left before 10. She did not stay. I still had the compass in my chest pocket every shift. She still had hers in the wooden box upstairs. Neither of us said. We waited. One Sunday Reggie mentioned to his mother, offhanded, that he had seen me at my locker the day before and noticed something small and brass in there that he hadn't looked at closely. Colette did not answer him. She did not ask. But she knew for certain now. Around that same time, one of Sable's colleagues from the Atlanta firm drove down for a weekend and stopped for coffee at Foxy Loxy. He saw me at the corner table with, as he put it later, a very elegant woman with a quiet way about her. When he was back in the office Monday, he told Sable over lunch. Sable asked for the name. When he said Prine, she went cold. She was on the road to Savannah the next weekend. A civil filing was her excuse. The last night of that quiet stretch, Colette and I sat on my porch swing at dusk. She said we were slow. I said I was afraid we would break it. She said she was afraid too, but she was more afraid of the thing we both kept and did not name. I understood then that she was talking about the compass. I opened my mouth to say it. My phone rang. Industrial fire on West Broad. I had to go. I kissed her on the forehead, my first time, and ran to the truck. I got home at 3 in the morning smelling like plastic. Colette had waited up for me on my porch. She had waited every fire since we started, I only found that out later. She just made me a glass of water and went home. She did not know Sable was already in town. Sable had gotten a room at the Kessler that evening and was drafting the conversation she was going to have. I need to tell you what Sable took the night she left me 4 years ago. I had a leather journal, brown, worn on the corners, the kind of book you buy once at a shop on River Street and use for the rest of your life. I'd started writing in it the week I got out of the hospital after Kirkwell. For 6 years, every week, sometimes a sentence, sometimes a page. Some entries were just this. Went into a duplex fire on Waters today. Pulled out a boy who couldn't have been more than 8. I thought about you the whole ride back. Some were longer. I don't know why I got to live and you didn't. I keep trying to earn it. Every time I put the coat on, I try to earn it. The night we finalized the divorce, I was down in the garage boxing my tools by myself. Sable went upstairs and took the journal out of the bottom drawer of my nightstand and put it in her own suitcase. I thought I'd lost it in the move. I grieved that book like a person for weeks. I stopped writing after that. For years later, on the 92nd day since Colette had asked me her question in the yard, Sable Kilpatrick drove out to Ardsley Park in the middle of the afternoon while I was on shift. She rang the bell. Colette opened the door. Colette didn't know her by sight. She'd heard the name from me one time, in a sentence I no longer remembered saying. Sable introduced herself and asked for 10 minutes. Colette looked at her a long moment, then stepped back and let her in. They sat in the front room, in David's chair and across from it. Sable had done her research before she came. She put the brown leather journal on the coffee table between them, hands folded, calm the way lawyers are calm when they know the paper is going to do the work. She told Colette she should read it. She said I had written in it for 6 years about her dead husband, about the debt of it, about trying to be worthy because I had lived instead of him. Every page, she said. Every week for 6 years, and only near the end did the entries change. She said this was not love, Mrs. Prine. This was mourning wearing the clothes of it. Colette picked up the book. She did not open it. Sable added, careful, that I also still carried David's compass in my chest pocket on every shift, 11 years now, and hid it in my locker otherwise. She asked Colette if she knew. Colette said, quiet and level, that she knew. Sable was surprised for half a second. Then Colette asked her, evenly, if there was anything else. Sable said the widow was too smart not to see what she saw. A man who carried a dead man's compass for 11 years was not a man who could love again. He was a man standing at a grave. And Colette was the keeper of that grave. She said not to confuse the two roles. Colette set the book down on the table. She thanked Sable for coming. She asked her to leave. Sable left. She left the journal behind. Colette read it that night, alone in the kitchen, with the tea kettle whistling once and going ignored. 6 years of my handwriting, some of it steady, some of it slanted the way a man writes at 4 in the morning after a bad call. It was hard. It was full of ache. But scattered through the last year of it, before I stopped writing, the entries had begun to change. Today Mrs. C thanked me for surviving and I didn't know how to answer her. Mrs. C stood too long in her doorway tonight, and I stood too long looking back, and neither of us said a thing. I don't know when the debt I owed her husband started to feel like something else with her. I'm scared I know. Reggie came by the station today and I couldn't look him in the eye. She read those. She read them twice. She cried. The next morning at the end of my night shift, I walked out of the bay at 7 and there was her car in the lot. She was sitting behind the wheel. I got in the passenger side. She handed me the journal and asked if I remembered it. My blood slowed. I said, Sable. She said, yes. I said nothing. She turned to face me. She said she needed to ask me one question and she needed a true answer. Was she love, or was she atonement? I opened my mouth. Nothing came. She saw it. She said it was all right. She said we both needed time. 6 days, she said. Don't text me. I won't text you. On the 6th day, one of us walks up the other's steps. That was all. She drove away. I worked 2 shifts back to back. I did not sleep well between them. I read her question in every alarm bell, in every siren, in the quiet stretches between calls when the bay lights hum and nobody says anything. Am I love, or am I atonement? At 3 in the morning on the 3rd day I opened my locker at the station and took out the compass and sat on the bench and looked at it for 30 minutes. I turned it over in my hand. I read the little engraving. I remembered David saying the fire finds you but the direction is yours. I finally understood what I'd been doing wrong for 11 years. I'd been treating the compass as a direction David had picked for me. It was never that. It was a compass. He gave it to me so I could pick a direction. I'd been carrying him instead of using it. And that meant I could not carry him into a life with her. On the 5th day Sable texted me. She said she was still at the Kessler for 3 more nights and asked if I'd thought it through. I did not answer. I heard later she reached out to Sadie through a mutual friend to try to arrange something. Sadie shut it down inside a day. On the sixth day, in the afternoon, Reggie came by my porch unannounced. He sat on the swing and did not say anything for a full minute. He asked if his mother was all right. I told him she was waiting for me. He asked what I was about to do. I told him. I was giving the compass back. He asked, careful, if I meant giving it back to his father. I told him no. I was giving it to his mother. If she did not want to keep it, she would choose what came next. Reggie sat with that. He asked if I wanted a witness. I told him no, and thank you. He stood, put his hand on my shoulder, said, "Big brother," and left without saying anything else. That night I sat at my kitchen table with the compass on the wood between my hands. I took a scrap of yellow paper and wrote one sentence on it. My direction from here on is you. I folded it into quarters and put it in the chest pocket of my shirt. I did not know that at the same hour, in her house across town, Colette had already gone upstairs and taken the wooden box out of the closet and set it on the kitchen counter, waiting for me. On the morning of the sixth day I drove out to Ardsley Park at 9 on a Sunday. The compass sat on the passenger seat. The note was folded in my chest pocket. I rang the bell. She opened. She was dressed already, not in a robe. We went into the kitchen. Sun came through the lace at the window in long soft bars, and the coffee was already made. I put the compass on the wood of the table between us. I did not speak for a moment. She looked at it. She was not surprised. She had known for 11 years, but this was the first time she had seen it. I told her I had carried it 11 years. I told her I was leaving it here. I told her that if I loved her as a way to earn back a debt, I would not be able to set it down. If I could set it down, then what was left was her. There was another compass inside. The same one. The same brass. The same needle. The same case. The engraving was the only thing different. Mine was etched, small on the back, KE 3/30. Kirkwell Engine, the district nickname for our station, and the 30th of March, the day I signed on with him at the bay. Hers was etched, D&C, 6/8/02. The day they were married. She said David had ordered the two of them from a small shop on King Street in Charleston, years apart. Hers the day they married. Mine after I'd been at Engine 9 long enough for him to know I was going to stay. He'd carried it in his own pocket for a while before he handed it over. He had not lived long enough to tell her he'd given me one. She learned about it a year after his death, when Reggie mentioned in passing what I still carried in my chest pocket. She had kept hers since, waiting for me to say I had mine. I had not. She had understood why, because she had not told me either. I asked her, my voice rough, if she had known for 11 years. She said yes. She looked at me straight then, and she said this, and I have not forgotten a word of it. David gave me the compass because he loved me. He gave her hers because he loved her. Same object. He wanted both of us to find our way. He was not the kind of man who would give a compass to a woman he wanted sitting still. If he had wanted her in that reading chair the rest of her life, he'd have given her something soft. He gave her a compass because he knew, one day, she'd have to walk again. I cried. First time in 10 years. It took a while to stop. I sat at her kitchen table and cried, and she did not touch me, and she did not tell me to stop, she just poured me a cup of coffee and set it in front of me and waited. When I could talk again, I took the folded note out of my chest pocket. I put it on the table between the two compasses. She opened it. She read the one sentence. She set it back down where I had put it. She looked at me and said, quiet, that I had her permission. We sat a long time. She poured herself a cup too. Her hand did not shake. Then she said, matter of fact, that Sable had brought her the journal, and she had read all of it. She wasn't angry with me for what I had written. She was angry with Sable for taking it. But Sable had, without meaning to, given her proof I had loved her longer than either of us knew. In a strange way she owed the woman a thank you she would never say aloud. I would speak with Sable that afternoon. Colette told me not to spend too many words on her. Sable didn't deserve too many. That afternoon I walked into the lobby of the Kessler and found Sable at a low table with a laptop and a whiskey neat. She asked if I was there to thank her. I was there to speak. I sat down. I told her she had taken my journal 4 years ago because she wanted something to swing at me one day. She had swung it at Colette instead. She had thought Colette would leave. Colette had read every page and stayed. Sable had, by accident, put in Colette's hand proof I had loved her a long time. I would thank her once for that, and then I was done. From now on she was not to text me, not to come to the Prine house, not to drive past Engine 9. If she did, I would file for a restraining order, and Reggie, Sadie, and Colette would all sign. Sable asked if I really loved her. Yes. I asked her to leave. She closed her laptop and walked out. I drove out to Ardsley Park that evening. Colette was already on the porch. I sat next to her on the swing. I said, "Done." She said, "Done." She put her foot lightly against mine. Sadie opened the door and told us there was pho, and to come eat. We went in. That night I stayed at the Prine house for the second time in 10 years, but not in the guest room. I slept on the small daybed off the porch. She slept in her own room. In the morning, when I came out to the kitchen, I saw that both compasses had been placed on the mantel over the fireplace. Side by side. She had done it while I was sleeping. At the family meeting a month later, we sat around the kitchen table, all 4 of us, with the same lemon butter striped base Colette had made every 30th of March for a decade. Reggie said, plain, that if this was real then it was family, and I was not to hurt his mother. Sadie said I had already been family for 10 years, and now I needed to be tender with her mother's heart. Colette laid her hands flat on the wood and told her children that they had worried over her long enough, and it was her turn to worry over herself. She thanked them for the 10 years they had held her up. Then we ate. I sold the little house on Baldwin Park 2 weeks after that. There was too much of Sable in the walls. I put my things in storage. I did not move into the Prine house. We had agreed we each still needed a space of our own until we were truly ready. I rented a small 1-bedroom over in the Starland district, 10 minutes from Ardsley Park. Colette came for dinner sometimes. I stayed over at her place sometimes, always on the daybed by the porch, never in her room. On the 14th of February that year, David's birthday, we lit a candle together for the first time. Every year before, I'd lit one at my locker at the station and she'd lit one on her mantel at home, both of us alone in different rooms, not knowing the other was doing the same. This year we lit one on her mantel, the 2 compasses between us. "Happy birthday, David," she said. "Thank you, brother," I said. She put her hand on mine. That was enough. That spring Sadie brought a young man home to meet us. Reggie sat next to me at the dinner table and whispered, deadpan, that it was his turn to vet his sister's boyfriend, and would I please teach him how to do the older brother stare. I laughed for the first time in a long time. In the summer Reggie and his wife had a baby boy. They named him David Prine Crestwood. David for his grandfather. Crestwood for me. Reggie handed me the baby on the front steps and said, without ceremony, that David was for his father, and Crestwood was for the older brother he'd found. I held that boy on the porch a long time. Colette stood behind me with her hand on my shoulder. She did not need to say anything. That fall I asked Colette to marry me on the stone bench at Bonaventure that she had put beside David's grave 6 years back so she could sit with him every week. She and I had both sat on that bench separately more times than either of us could count. That day was the first time we sat on it together. The Spanish moss was going gold in the afternoon light. Somewhere in the next section a groundskeeper was raking. I took a small box out of my jacket pocket. A simple gold band, and inside it, engraved small, KE3/30. Kirkwell engine, the day I lived, and 10 years later, the day she asked me a question in a lit-up yard. I did not kneel. She would have hated that. I asked her if she would marry me. She said yes, quiet, the way she said most things that mattered. Then she laid her hand on David's stone and told him he had watched over me, and he was watching over her now, and it was going to be all right, and thank you. I put my hand on the stone beside hers. I did not say anything. He knew. The wedding was in the backyard at Ardsley Park in the spring. The string lights ran through the same old live oak as the night of the party, and the hurricane lamps were out again along the porch rail. Sadie hung the bulbs and did not tell either of us she was making it look like that night on purpose. Reggie stood beside me in his dress uniform. His wife held the little boy, 8 months old, asleep on her shoulder through the whole thing. Colette took her old wedding ring off before the vows. She handed it to Reggie without ceremony. He carried it out to the cemetery the next week and left it on David's stone for good. She wore her mother's ring instead. I wore the new one. The whole crew from Engine 9 came, dress blues. 2 of her old friends from the hospital came. Sable was not there. That night I slept in her room for the first time. She turned off the lamp and held my hand until morning. That was all. 2 years have gone by since the wedding. I am 41. Colette is 51. We live in the Ardsley Park house now. On the mantel in the front room there is the crew photograph from Engine 9, David's captain's helmet on the shelf beside it, and a small open wooden box that holds the 2 compasses and the folded note I wrote at my kitchen table on the 6th day. Nothing hidden. A Sunday morning a few weeks ago, Sadie came over with her boyfriend, now her fiancé, and Reggie and his wife came with the little boy, 2.5 now, hauling a plastic shovel around the yard and yelling at everyone about a rock he'd found. Colette stood at the counter making cinnamon toast. I was pouring coffee. Sadie leaned on the counter and said, "Big brother, do you remember the night you stood by the grill and your truck was broken?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "You should know something. I saw Mama looking at you for a week straight before that party. I told Reggie he was going to drive out to your place and help you fix the transmission. I told him not to." I looked up. Sadie grinned. She said she had been hoping for 4 years that her mother and I would finally see each other properly. Colette, without turning from the stove, said, quiet, that Sadie could tell me. But she was not to tell her mother. Her mother preferred to pretend she had not known. We laughed. The needle of a compass always points north. I understand now, in a way I did not for 11 years, that David did not give me the compass so I could go looking for him. He gave it to me so I could believe there was a direction, on a bad night, in the dark of a stairwell, with the ceiling coming down. Colette was standing in that direction the whole time. She waited. 10 years is a long time to wait, and she did it without ever once putting a hand on me before I was ready. That is a rare thing in a person. That is the thing I married. I am telling you all this from the porch at the Ardsley Park house. Colette is inside making an afternoon pot of coffee. The 2 compasses sit on the mantel side by side, mine etched with the 30th of March, hers etched with the 6th of August, '02. Same shop. Same hand. David gave them to 2 different people at 2 different times, but what he wanted, in both cases, was the same. He wanted both of us to keep moving. Some people will say we crossed a line, Colette and I. My best friend's mother. My captain's widow. 10 years between us. I did not come to her because of who she was to other people. I came because of who she was to herself. She had been waiting on her own permission. On the 10th anniversary of losing him, she gave herself that permission. Let me ask you 2 questions. Has there been someone standing at the north of your life for years, someone you never turned around to see, and what was it that kept your eyes on the ground? And is there something you have been carrying in your chest pocket for years, a debt, a keepsake, a regret, that you have not yet set down? If you did, what would be left standing there? I thought I was keeping David's compass so I would not forget. Turns out I was keeping it so I would one day be ready to set it down. Setting a thing down is not forgetting it. It is trusting there is a direction, and that you are strong enough to walk it. If any of this reached you tonight, tap the like, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. Tell me if a broken down car ever saved your life without your knowing it at the time. Your story might be the one I tell next week.